Hello, this is Laura Wogzogen, your math instructor this semester. This is going to be a brief video that goes over Project 1, which is on annual rainfall. So if you go to Modules in Canvas, and first of all, I'm using a laptop computer, so the view might be a little different for you if you're using a tablet or a phone. But we have a StatDisk help folder, which has an intro video that I highly suggest watching at least once, maybe twice, and then also additional information that video is going to go over. So for us, this video is focusing on our Project 1, which is on annual rainfall. There is an intro video for us. Watch before you even begin the project so you have a better understanding of expectations. And then also here's our PDF of our project, and then also a partial project example. This does not use the actual data, it uses car data, so something different. And then a place to upload our annual rainfall project, our final project answers. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the PDF. And at the beginning of this, the annual rainfall, there is some history here to kind of read through about how they started collecting annual rainfall. But I'm going to go ahead and start reading. It says, we will conduct a study on millimeters, and this is abbreviated lowercase m, of annual rainfall in the wettest 10 countries. The 10 countries rainfall can be found here, and there is a link. I also did type out the web address, so that way, either way, you open up this article. And it says, make sure to use the data from the wettest 10 countries link to complete this project. So the data is listed on here. So you need to open up this article to collect the data. It says, using the data provided in the above website, write down the annual rainfall in millimeters in the 10 wettest countries, and then use this information to complete the project. The points for each part are listed, and the total points that can be earned are 45. This is an individual project, and each student will submit their own project solutions. This project needs to be typed. Each part needs to be correctly labeled and in order. And StatDisk, the web address is listed here. It also does work with statdisk.com too, which is a statistical computer program, and it is free, needs to be used. Using a graphing calculator for these parts will result in 0 points. So the parts that we need to use StatDisk for are, and it's in bold here, are parts 3, 4, and 5. These are going to have a screenshot of the output on StatDisk. Distributions, which are tables, can be created in Excel. You guys can use Google Forms, Google Sheets, anything that you want in order to create a table. You can also make them in StatDisk or in Word. You must provide the specific answers. So as you put a screenshot, it's going to look something almost like what your calculator does. It gives you a bunch of information. And maybe we only need 1, 2, maybe even 3 things in that kind of output, that screenshot that we would have. And so you would put your screenshot that's kind of showing your work, and then underneath it, you would type out your answers. So the mean is, or the standard deviation is, and then it does say to round correctly to 3 decimal places. So make sure you do not edit your screenshot. This is almost like just taking a picture of the StatDisk part, putting it in, and then explaining what your answers are right underneath it, and making sure when you do that, you round your answers 3 decimal places in your explanation. No points are rewarded for using a graphing calculator. The objective is to gain knowledge of working with this program. I want you guys to realize too that we have 4 projects this semester. This is our first one. If you notice, there's only 3 parts that are requiring StatDisk. As we move through the different projects, there's going to be a lot more using StatDisk and also using very large sets of data. So this is our intro project, kind of getting used to this program. So the first thing on here says to create a frequency distribution. Again, that's a table that includes the name of the 10 wettest countries and their annual rainfall in millimeters, which are listed in the above article. So remember, go to that article. You're going to copy down the name of the 10 different names of those countries, and then also their respective annual rainfall in millimeters. This is worth 2 points. Make sure that when you do set up your table or your distribution, you do have those lines or bars kind of separating your data. Number 2 is creating a grouped frequency distribution with a class width of 100 millimeters of water and a starting value of 2,700 millimeters of annual rainfall. This, a great example to look at this one, it would be the one in our notes that deals with soccer player weights. If you notice, this distribution or table is worth 7 points, so definitely one that you want to make sure that you have a good understanding of. Number 3 is the first one that we actually have to use StatDisk for, and this one says to create a histogram with a class width of 100 millimeters of water and a starting value of 2,700 millimeters of annual rainfall. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and open up StatDisk. And on StatDisk, I have no data values in here. You would have to actually type in your numbers. I'm just going to make up random numbers here just to kind of show you. And I just randomly put in some numbers. And if you notice, there's drop downs on here. So again, if you click on Analysis, Resampling, Data, and we also have data sets, which we're not using right now, but we will for later on projects. But again, this part was asking for us to do a histogram. So if you go to data and you do the drop down, you'll notice that there is a histogram option. So I will select that. You need to select what data you have and so where you put it. So it looks like for me, I put it in column 1. And then I can change my histogram title here. So maybe it's going to be annual rainfall. I change what I want the X value to be, the Y value to be, and so forth. And then you also have an auto fit option, which we're not using. We're going to be using the user defined because I did give you guys a class width and a class starting value. So you need to make sure you have those two things typed in here. And then once we have that, we are using frequency counts and we're going to hit plot. When you hit plot, it will create the histogram over here. And it will also change the labels and the title that you gave it. And then once you have that, you need to take a screenshot. So screenshot's going to be different depending on the device that you are using. So for using a phone, it's different. For me, I hit the Windows and print screen buttons at the same time. So there's a difference. So you might have to be looking it up on YouTube if you don't know how to do a screenshot on your device. So again, phones are different. I click a couple different buttons versus maybe your tablet or a laptop or a computer. So this is number 3 in creating that histogram. Going on to number 4, it says find the descriptive statistics of your raw data in part 1. This includes the sample mean. We also need to have the sample standard deviation and the 5-number summary. So again, I'm going to switch over back to StatDisk. And I'm on the histogram page, so I'm just going to click on the StatDisk up in the upper left-hand corner up here, and it's going to pull me back up. And these are the raw data values that I have from number 1. And it wants descriptive statistics. So if I go back down to data, you'll notice that there is an option here where it says explore data - descriptive statistics. So selecting that, it's going to be selecting the column that I have, and again, this is not the correct data. Selecting my values are in column 1, and then evaluate. You'll notice that I get a lot of output over here on the left-hand side. It's going to tell me the mean and the standard deviation and everything else, so I could take a screenshot of this. And then I'm going to input the screenshot, and then I need to make sure that underneath that screenshot, I write down it wanted the mean and the standard deviation, the 5-number summary, that when I write those down, mean is, I round it correctly to 3 decimal places. And same with the standard deviation and so forth. So that would be for the next one, for number 4. And this is also worth 7 points. Number 5 says to create a box plot of the raw data in number 1. And this is another one where we have to use StatDisk. So going back to StatDisk and selecting the StatDisk option, it pulls me back up to the regular page where my numbers are typed in. If I go to data again, if you notice all your options are in data, we did use the descriptive statistics on the last one. We used the histograms on the one before that. This time it wants a box plot. So I'm going to select that, and then It says, which column of data would you like to plot? My numbers were in column 1. And then I'm making a box plot. It does say not to make a modified box plot. So you would go ahead and hit box plot. And it does say this should not be a modified box plot. This is 7 points also. So a lot of points for those status parts. The hardest thing with status is just starting with it. So the earlier you start on it and get used to this program, the better off you will be. Number 6 is asking for you to describe the shape of the distribution in the box plot in part 5. So it says use complete sentences and clearly explain your reasoning. So make sure you say why you think it is specifically something. Make sure to use the same wording as stated in our class notes. And so you want to make sure you go back and use the class notes and you're not using outside resources. So number 7 says determine if there are any outliers. Must show all work and clearly explain why or why not any outliers exist. So again, remember, in order to find outliers, you have to find your upper and your lower fences. And in order to find your upper and your lower fences, you have to calculate your IQR, your interquartile range. So you want to make sure that you do that. Show your work as stated. Then number 8 says select a different country's annual rainfall. I have a link here that's going to open up a different website, and it has all the countries and their annual rainfall listed in millimeters. So you need to select, it does say a different country, and with that you want to make sure that you select something that was not already in your table. And so select something, a different country, any country that you want, and make sure you tell me the country and also the annual rainfall that that country receives in millimeters. So that should be an easy one to do, 1 point there. And then number 9 says find the z-score for your selected country in part 9. So remember your z-score, you need to go back and look at your notes if you don't remember the formula. Make sure you show your work for your calculations as the project suggested at the beginning. And you need to use the sample mean and sample standard deviation from part 4 to calculate that. So that's your z-score. And then you're going to have that, remember, rounding your answer to 3 decimal places. And then number 10, which is our last one here, says determine if the annual rainfall in millimeters of your selected country in part 9 is significantly low, significantly high, or not significant. Make sure to use complete sentences and clearly explain your reasoning, and make sure to use the same wording from our class notes / textbook. So you need to state if your specific country that you selected is significantly low, significantly high, or not significant rainfall. And then also make sure you explain why you believe this. Again, looking back at your notes for significantly low, significantly high, and not significant would be helpful. Best thing to do with the project is to get a very early start on this. There are some great resources and places to get help. First thing is going to be at our Marks. Our Marks has a computer lab there, and the computer lab is free to use, and there's also a full-time instructor that is in there that can help with using StatDisk. So the Marks is a great resource. You can also show up to office hours to ask questions. You can also work with your classmates, but just remember that everyone is submitting their own project. The wording, like stated in our syllabus, needs to be unique for you and not copied from another student or from any kind of online resource. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. Good luck on Project 1.